Hi there, I am Heather,
And I'm Amy.
and this is Ever So Clever Conversations with Amy and Heather, the experienced empaths.
And this is episode 20. Woohoo, you guys!
Yeah, celebrate.
We do. We're talking about why empaths seem naturally spiritually inclined. Heather and I brought these conversations together to really help empathic and highly sensitive people navigate these turbulent times and thrive. We're just really sharing a conversation about these themes. If you have theme ideas, holler them out to us and share them in the comments. We'd love to hear other ideas that you have, as well as share comments during this episode to support if you have questions or things you just want to share.
Yeah. So as empaths, I think that we look at things differently and we can connect dots. That's what I imagine too. Like we can see things from a spiritual perspective. And highly sensitive people. I think we just have this different, the inclined to, right? Look at things from a spiritual place and then can see how things connect.
I totally agree. And I think that that is the core to me of being intuitive, is being able to take things and make connection to them. If everything is connected, therefore there's nothing which cannot be connected. So to me, that's very natural to, particularly to the highly sensitive person, and also generally to the empath, because emotionally you're probably a few steps ahead of other people. And that means you are already connecting the dots and understanding that to a deeper degree.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I'm looking at what we were going to talk about.
Yeah, I think, another thing I'll bring up, and if I'm looking over to the side, my monitor on my computer is broken, so I have to look at a TV screen to see what we're doing. Bear with me. But I think another piece there is we also are people who are open to what's new, and I think we came kind of pre-programmed with this concept of how it is on Earth is not how it really is. It's not really what is true. And we know that, and I think it bothers us. And therefore, we lean to the spiritual of who we are, our soul and understanding, to help shift the tide, because we are kind of preemptive people by nature. We see things ahead of others and I think we want that change undeniably, because we are gentle people. And I think our world looks kind of harsh right now, and I don't think that's our nature. So it's natural for us to lean toward things that help us understand and make sense of what that harsh really means.
That's so true. It just reminds me of when Ellie was struggling through mental illness and all of that. I was, always searching for what I felt was like the truth. Like, what is the core meaning? What is causing this? There's something else to it. And I think as highly sensitive people and empaths, that's about what we are doing. We're like always looking for, why is it this way? Or can we go a different direction? And I used to say I was the truth seeker, because that was it. I was like, there's something more going on than what is that we just see, the mainstream sees in many things, right? And medication wasn't gonna maybe solve this issue. So it's something deeper, a deeper knowing that I kind of had to discover. But I find that in so many things that I do. And maybe that's why I'm good at researching too. It's like, no, there's more to that. Like there's something else to so many things that are going on. So I want to understand. When I understand something, I can grasp it and then be okay with it.
Yeah, I agree. I always think about with spirituality, you hear things or experience things or read things or however it comes your way. And then we can take what we want and build a foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for the empathic and highly sensitive, that foundation is pretty important. I know one characteristic about these types of people that we are is we constantly are hungry for information, right? I mean, we do constantly want to grow. We're curious people. And so we can find ourselves unsettled and ruminating quite a bit. It's a birthright, you guys. But that if we satiate that with some information, it moves us further, and then we can keep that in our bag of tricks for when we need it, which of course self-care and self-soothing are a massive piece of being these personality types as well.
Right. And I think that too, we reach out to, like, I will reach out and want to know more about like healing. That helped my daughter actually with some stuff. That's not what a lot of people or families were doing with someone that had a mental illness. I was searching out different options. And then when I started to understand them, I would want to learn them myself. And then Ellie was very intrigued and wanted to understand because that felt like who she was too. Her truth of who she was is someone that's more a healer and that type of a person. So I think we are almost come into this world or this time, and we're open and we're wanting to help and serve too as well. And for me, I think of all the people that I know that do healing, they are just, I don't like the word gifted, but they're just have this special that I don't have because I don't feel like I have that space. But they just have this uniqueness about them, and it should be honored. And a lot of us don't want to share that that's who we are. It can be scary to share our truth of who we are because it does seem different than a lot of others. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, Heather, something that you said tracks for me that I think is an important thing to mention, and this is just my observation. I'm not a doctor. I'm not saying this is a diagnosis. However, what I've noticed physically or mentally, when people circle and cycle and have a pain and then it's gone and then have a pain and then it's gone, that's actually a spiritual conundrum. It's not necessarily rooted physically, let's say, yet. And I think that's important for people like us to know that we have some power in managing and understanding and letting that move through and out. And when I hear you say, Heather, you knew that there was a different way to help your daughter, that to me, that's what we turn away from is, you know, you think about religion, and I'm not knocking religion at all. I think there's a very powerful baseline for people. However, my suspicion is people who are empathic or highly sensitive perhaps would lean toward being spiritually free versus maybe not in that specific construct of a ritualistic or so on religion. Okay, now I got off track, so let's hope I can remember where I was headed with this. But that we, I think I lost it, recognize a cycle and meet that cycle. And I do think another piece of this, which is not where I was going to head, is really that foundation is important, but also building along the way what is true for us about that connection and about how that spirituality works is also really important. And I do think a lot of kids are coming with spiritual conundrums so that we head into this arena. And that's also maybe preemptive to put in place some more of this intuition into our foundation as culturally and as a human, because I do believe that's where we're headed. So your leaning toward that is astute, I think, for your daughter, because it's leading her where she actually probably was really headed to go. And you found salvation in it. I mean, that might be too strong a word, but you found the questions you were really looking to answer through that process versus the medical doctors and so on, I think can really limit how we think about things. And I think get in the way sometimes of what we are really trying to manifest, and being aware and open-eyed about that. And like having this disposition of knowing ahead of things or being intuitive or being able to hold that space for those that can, we can't be afraid to speak out along these lines of saying, that doesn't follow what I know is true with a medical doctor or this or that. I mean, I just did that last week. And it was very powerful, the result. I said, I'm not going to go along with this thing because I knew spiritually it doesn't line up for who I am. And it was actually not only didn't line up, it was really almost to a degree of abusive and just wrong. And then the company that was helping me met me with a really appropriate option, right? But it showed them women aren't accepting this anymore. And I called that out specifically to what was going on and how that met me. I think we also need to do that so that maybe that just helped another woman who won't have to deal with that situation. We have to keep calling it out. I know AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, calls things out too. She'll say, this isn't right. And I'm kind of getting off topic, but I do think the way through and this idea of spirituality is about that doesn't sense right for me. And therefore I'm not going to let it go. Instead, I'm going to address it in a profound and powerful and adult, mature way, address that conflict and lay it out as I see it and what's true and what I feel, and then let that shift. I also feel that's a part of our spiritual journey right now, to shift the patterns as we see them, just like Heather did. I mean, I think you shifted the pattern with your daughter by seeing it from an angle that other parents may have even laughed at you or given you some grief about, because they're like, what are you doing? Why would you? That's hard. It's hard to walk in that journey alone. I feel like we have to walk less alone today than we did 10 years ago or 20 years ago.
So true. Well, that's it. It's like we decided to stop medication and we did it safely, but it's so questioned. Even when we would go back to the doctor for like a physical, they'd be like, what medication is she on? And we're like, none. Like, take that off her chart, because she had so many listed on there. Mm-hmm. You know, and I would stand in that power of that. Like, nope, she's on nothing right now.
Yeah.
And she's and she's doing well. And we kind of had to do something similar where we spoke up and said, we're removing our daughter from your facility. It does not feel right. You know, we cut ties with a certain local mental health care, like big center here, because it was like, no, that was not the right direction for our child. So it is really for us that are more spiritually inclined using that, because we've been gifted that, and, you know, in a way, or we've been born that way. And if we can start to use that and not just, dismiss it or question it, but really stand in the power of it. And if you have children, for sure, now she saw that and she knows now what she speaks to be true for her. Mm-hmm. And she follows through it. You know, she just will say what's on her mind and how she feels and what she needs and because she finally felt like she was heard. There was a long time where she felt she wasn't, but we've resolved that and healed that. But, I just think that that's really one thing that we need to remember is speak up, because what you are feeling is probably, I'm not going to say probably, is right for you.
It's great, Heather. I totally agree. I also want to add in there, spiritually, what I've learned as an intuitive reader is that the more succinctly we ask a question and the more we work toward that, the better the result. And so the thing I'd add on to what Heather's saying is, if you have a child or yourself who is seeing a therapist, I would ask the therapist, do you focus on the problem or the solution in your therapy style? And how do you do that? Because I think, I don't know why too, it's come around in my life to look at some angles of therapists. And I really believe that if we're looking at the solution, it's actually about teaching the child how to meet different situations so their confidence comes in, versus going back to look at what has happened in the past. I think that we're looking at that heavily. I can't see you, Heather, so I saw your point.
I'm pointing to you because I feel like I was going to point to my nose. You're spot on, because with Ellie, she said, I do not want to go to therapy anymore. I would rather have a coach or someone where I'm looking to the future, not replaying the past.
I agree. And I think with these people who are empathic and highly sensitive in particular, you mentioned a kind of a red flag for me with what Ellie said, is that she really, I can't remember how you said it, but highly sensitive people want to be heard and they need to be in touch with their knowing. And so if we take them away from that, if we're like, well, here's what you're going to do. Here, just take this medicine. That's going to not only be harmful, but the highly sensitive person and empath isn't likely to go along with it. So they're not only taking something that probably may or may not be good for them or work with them, their resistance to it is actually fairly high, because it didn't come a way that is natural to who they are. It wasn't really about them. It was about, here, this is what we give when people say that. And they know the difference. Even young children that are in these categories will know that difference. And that's really tough on them. It needs to be, what do you think you need? And that sounds crazy when they're 8 or 6, but the kid will probably likely have the answer for you. And then it's about breaking down the steps on how to create that. They might say some crazy things that are way too big. And then it's not going, oh my gosh, we can't do that. But what are the steps? And as an adult, we can do the same things. What do I really need? And how do I break down the steps to be able to do that? Remember, there's that strategy of the big picture thinker, but I do feel there's also this need for the highly sensitive and empath to take that big picture. It's going to be fine in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
And what are the micro steps that I can take right now to start achieving and moving toward that? Who can I call in for support to hold me accountable or to help me? And that's also about being spiritual. We weren't stuck on an island and put on Earth. We were stuck with a whole bunch of mixed personalities and different experiences. And how do we make that run? How do we work with that?
I love what you're just saying, because with even, I don't want to keep going back to Ellie, but I'll just say one more thing with her. She was on so many medications too that she was numb to life and experiences. And then when she did come off, she did start to have more spiritual things happening to her. And I think it's because she was no longer shut down. Mm-hmm. So she was hearing, she started to have different experiences that were scary at first, but now, we found that to be amazing. And so I feel like I'm raising this child has some different experiences than I do myself. So, or I'm raising Amy, maybe. Another Amy, right?
You're free. Be my mama.
Yeah, right. So that is how I kind of knew that was the right thing too. She, like, just the way she shifted, her eyes even were brighter, and it was like we knew we did the right thing because you could see the difference in her. Right. And so we had numbed her not knowing, and then to see her kind of her spiritual, I keep using gifts, but that's just easiest to say right now. We're coming through. And it wasn't being numbed down anymore. So, and it's not, I don't want to talk all about medication, but I know that that's something that does happen because we show being anxious or depressed as an empath or highly sensitive person because it's hard for us in the world to adjust or even see things that are wrong and not be able to fix them. Right. So that does make us feel these things, and it does show up in anxiety, depression, and other mental illnesses. So I don't know that it's really a chemical imbalance. It's maybe the way that we're built, our system, our sensitivity.
Well, and I agree. And my sense about that is actually that emotionally we can't keep up with the system because the system makes no sense to us. Mm-hmm. And then it becomes this anomaly where our body is saying, kind of like a roadmap, okay, your pancreas is upset because, well, that's about trust. Your lungs are upset. Well, that's about our joy and our grief and our sadness. So our body is a roadmap. And I think with depression, I really think that idea of I can't get the frustration or anger out of me because nobody is listening or really understanding it. And so we turn it back inward. And really what I feel, that's liver energy in my mind, but that energy's core is I'm screaming for love and nobody is listening. And so you look at something like alcoholism and you're like, duh, they're screaming for love and nobody's listening and they feel out of control, right? So they start controlling as a result. And I think it's a lot more simple, but we've denied how people feel. And that's part of the problem. And I do think in regard to it, once we clinch understanding our feelings, which we're getting more in touch with that of take a breath, stop in your tracks and feel the feeling and let it go by you, or, let it express. And the mind, once we get into more of this paralleling and being okay with those two and more neutral, we'll move into sensing, which is that more intuitive understanding and knowing without really understanding what the hell's going on. So,
right.
I think, Heather, we might want to wrap up and move into our deeper episode for our members, but I want to leave you with this, that, if you're interested in being a member, we have a Patreon account and we have different levels that you can join with us and be a part of that. And in the next part of this episode, I'm actually going to reveal what type of a doctor I would see in place of seeing a psychiatrist. My experience for my clients and for myself and for others that I know, I think, like, I've interviewed a ton of Lyme patients too, and their experience with psychiatrists actually kind of alarms me. So I think there's a different type of doctor to see that can help us, especially being the highly sensitive and empathic personality type. So in our next episode 21, it can drink. What? I can't wait that it can drink. Do you think it can drink?
That is, yeah. Maybe we can drink for it.
like that even more. Heather and I like the same type of wine, so we're good buddies. But it's the importance of connection for the empath. We're cycling into some of these themes that are appropriate for heading into the holidays.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Super savvy and be savvy with that. So tune in next week. And there might be a blurb next week. We may not be here. We might have to do it a different day or so. We'll be in touch and let you know what's happening about that. Because I'm traveling and I might not have access so well. Heather, what do you want to share?
Oh, I just thought in the deeper conversation, I'm going to be sharing the 8 different types of empath, because there are different ones, and really 2 of them are about absorbing energy. So I'm going to share those. So if you're interested, again, grab our Patreon information. I just put the link in here, and we share our deeper conversations. You can look back to the ones that we've done in the past. So even if you're a new member, you'll be able to go listen to all of the ones that we have done in the past. So I think we're good for today, and we look forward to sharing more with you next week. Probably. We'll see. If not, we'll let you know.
Thanks, you guys, and be well.
Yes, take care.